Welcome back to my channel. I'm Brooklyn and I'm with Block Party Quilt Co. Today I'm going to show you one of the most foundational things in quilting, and it is the half square triangle. So this is the first technique that you'll learn after you learn how to piece squares together. So when you want to step into more advanced quilting, this is how you're going to do it. And they are everywhere. In almost every pattern that I write, we have half square triangles. So here in our logo quilt, we've got one right here, and there's our little guy that normally hangs up behind me. We have half square triangles in our super popular Christmas gnomes pattern. They're hiding right here in the gnome's feet. And even in this quilt, there are half square triangles everywhere. Almost all of these little blocks, like these guys here, and the ones right here and here, they all use half square triangles. So this is a really important skill to learn, and I'm going to show you how to do it as if you had never done this kind of thing before. We'll go over every step from making it to beginning to end. So first you'll need your 2 squares of fabric. Most of the time you do these in different colors so that it actually makes contrast in the piece you're doing. We're going to start with the blue. We turn it over to the back. And then I'm using a quilting ruler just because I have it, but you can use any straight edge and draw a line directly down the center on the diagonal. This is one of my favorite tools. It's a heat erasable pen. I love it. Some people have had problems with it staying on the fabric and leaving marks. I've never had that problem. And so the concept is you make the mark, and then when you iron it, the mark goes away. And on half square triangles, when you're marking the back, it really doesn't matter because that part, this line, is what's going to be cut. So sometimes when I'm in a pinch, I just use a Sharpie. And I know that's really bad, but it's okay for half square triangles. So then you take your other piece and you lay them right sides together, and we're going to put a pin in it and sew it. So now I take my 2 squares and I make sure that they're lined up as well as I can, and I place a pin in this to just kind of hold it together. I like to place it far away from this line because we're going to be sewing here. So if we put it on that line, it'll be in the way of sewing and we'll have to remove it. But this way we don't have to take the pin out. I am going to sew a 1/4 inch away from this center line on both sides. And I like to do it just both at the same time. If I'm doing a lot at once, I'll do it all of one side of all the triangles, and then I'll flip it and do all of the other side. So they're in a chain. But since I'm only doing one, I'll just do them both right now. So now I can take my pin out. And you can see this seam is not super straight. But the good news is at this stage in this block, this is really forgiving. So I'm not even going to need to take that out. If it's really crazy, you might want to, but I am going to go from here. From this point, I am going to take my little square and I'm going to cut it along that diagonal line. If you're feeling really crazy, you don't even have to use a ruler. You can use scissors and cut it there because this doesn't have to be very clean. But if you want to make sure you're doing it without messing it up, I recommend using the ruler. Now we'll open it and see you have your little half square triangle shape. And you have 2. So that's nice that you make 2 at once. We are going to press this open. Most patterns will recommend a way to press, and I'll just tell you some of the benefits of each. I don't like to ever press towards the lighter fabric because you'll be able to see this piece of fabric behind here. You can usually see it back here. And if this seam is really far off, then your darker fabric will show through and it'll be kind of in this area and it doesn't look very good. If you press towards the darker fabric, that's usually what is recommended, but sometimes it's supposed to be pressed open. And that's how this looks. So when you press your seams open, it makes the seams just a little bit weaker, but it can help eliminate bulk at the places where these intersect, and that can help you with your quilting at the end, and it can also help you just reduce bulk so you don't have any like parts that are standing off very far. Because I'm turning this into a pinwheel block, I'm going to iron this open. Now I'm not pulling on it, I'm not trying to stretch it, because now this is on the bias, which means it has a good stretch. So don't stretch it when you're pressing, just open it. And it's very flat, which I like. Next, we're gonna square up this block, and I have my little ruler here. This is a 5-inch ruler. I use this shape a lot, so I have this size. But when you're squaring up a lot of blocks in a row and you don't wanna mess up where you're squaring them, and if you don't have that size of a ruler, here's a fun little trick. You can add a piece of washi tape onto your ruler over the lines where you need to square up your block. So these started as 3-inch squares, so they will end up as 2.5-inch squares, and I am just going to mark that with this. Now I essentially have a 2.5-inch ruler. So I like to line up, a lot of rulers have this little crosshair here, and it's not necessary, but it's helpful if your ruler has it. So I line that black line up with the line on my seam. I make sure that I have fabric tucked under this washi tape, and then I am gonna cut off this outside edge. Now these are like microscopic cuts. There's not a lot of fabric that comes off at all, but even that much fabric, this is like 2 threads worth, that can help make your quilt so much more neat and clean, because all of your blocks are going to be the exact same size. So let's pull that lint off and flip it around, and we'll do it again. This time, instead of making sure there's fabric underneath the washi tape, I'm lining it up exactly on this corner, while I'm still also lining up the line down the center. Now I have a half square triangle that is exactly 2.5 inches. And when I use it in the block, I can know that it is perfect. When you do that over and over on your whole quilt, it makes such a big difference. So just to do that again, let's take our other one. We'll press it open. I like doing it from the back, and I'm just gently pulling to make sure there's no folds in it. Then I come around and do it again from the front. If you have pressed your seams to one direction, the only difference in trimming it is that you'll have both of these little dog ears on the same side. So now you have 2 perfect half square triangles, and in your different shapes, you can arrange these in so many different ways. This is its own triangle. This is now like stripy. These are alternating. They are so much fun. You can do so much with half square triangles, kind of like I showed you at the beginning. So I hope you enjoyed taking your simple squares and turning them into little half square triangles. This is such an important skill to learn in quilting. And if you have any questions, make sure to comment below and I will try to answer them. If you would like to see more tutorials, we are always posting. So leave a comment of your questions and we will be uploading more videos. Make sure to go to our channel and check out all of our other tutorials so you can learn how to do all of these basics in quilting.